Good morning, gardeners. Today I want to talk about making new plants from grapevines. So this is all about grapevine cuttings. Uh, Grapevine is one of the simplest plants there is to propagate. It's a real easy one. It's one reason it's been around as a crop with humans for so long. It's easy to make more plants. Every winter we have to go out and we have to prune our grapevines. This is a required process with the plant, and so we end up with all kinds of wood that we're taking off. Now we could just compost the wood or use it for a mulch. On the other hand, when you harvest it, you could use it to make more plants, and that's exactly what I'm doing with my vine here. First thing you need to know, and that is that all cuttings must go into the soil in the same direction they grew in the field. So you have to know which way is down and which way is up when you take your cuttings. So when I'm pruning a grapevine and I see a spot that looks like it's going to make pretty good cutting wood, I kind of like to use stuff about the diameter of a pencil. Works for me, although you can use bigger wood if you want to. But when I take the wood, I cut the root end on an angle, say a 45, all right, and I cut the tip end at a 90, square across. That way when I pick the cutting up, even if it's hours later, I can tell which way was up and which way was down. With grapes, you can also tell by the direction the buds point, because the buds on the sides of the stem point towards the tip. They're little arrows, and so even if you get confused, you can still figure this one out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to make myself some cuttings. I like to use a cutting that's about that long right there. That's well, let's see, what is that? Hey, look at that. It's the length of my forearm approximately. Okay, and so we have one end square, one end on an angle. And so then I'm going to cut the next one here on an angle, continue on down. It's a very simple process. It's really pretty easy. And right here we got a big old squirrely hook in this one. So I was going to get rid of the part of it I don't like. That's pretty screwy right there. There we go. I usually cut off all of the side shoots and the tendrils when I do this, so I have just a straight piece of wood to work with. Okay, so the next step in the process is to begin to strike the cuttings. I have pots sitting here waiting for me. Most of my cuttings lined up here, all pointing in the right direction, and I'm going to strike about a half a dozen or so cuttings to a pot. I'm going to push these into the container about halfway down to the bottom of the pot. You don't want to strike your cuttings to the bottom of the container. If you do that, they usually won't root properly. There we go. This one. And so just pay attention, look for the angles to make sure that you're going in the right direction here. Alrighty, there we have it. A 1-gallon nursery pot. I have filled the nursery pot with potting soil. When you're striking grapevine cuttings, the kind of medium you have in the pot is not really very important. This is not a very picky plant. And so just a plain decent quality potting soil is going to work. A seed starting mix, pro mix, just peat moss with perlite, peat moss with perlite and vermiculite, peat moss with horticultural sand and perlite. These all work. Okay, so the type of medium isn't really too important. I've got about half a dozen in here that seems to fit well in a pot. One reason that I strike more than one cutting per container is because if I lose one or two, I still have 5, 4, 3 cuttings in a pot, and the space isn't wasted. Later on, when they begin to root in spring, I will take the pots apart, separate all the cuttings, and then put them to individual containers. This is more compact though. It saves a lot of room for me because these are going to be sitting here probably almost all the way to April before they really start to take off this year. And so it's several months. Using a more compact situation allows me to get a whole lot more grapevines raised in a small area. It's really all there is to it, and so all we have to do now is just take these, put them aside into an area where the sunlight is not too bright, just good indirect light under a tree in your yard, in a shade house, some such thing like that. East side of the building. Leave them out in the rain, leave them out in the weather. These don't need sheltering to be able to grow. They would prefer that you leave them out into the winter conditions in most cases, unless the cuttings you're working with are in a very, very northern climate where the cutting itself may freeze solid. Then you're going to wait until a little bit later. But pretty much whatever the safe pruning date for pruning your grapes is in your area, that's a good date for taking hardwood cuttings from grapes too. So it's about perfect no matter where you live. I'm here in Hawaii. I'm doing this in January. You know, I'd probably do it in January, February in California too. But if I'm in Minnesota, this might wait all the way to April. Okay, so it'll vary depending on your climate. But come midsummer, you start pulling on these cuttings, and they're going to offer resistance. Right now, they slide right out of the pot like nothing's holding them because there's no roots. Okay, but soon, when you tug on the cutting, you're going to feel that it resists. Later, you'll look underneath, and you'll see roots coming out of the bottom of the pot. Those roots indicate that this plant is beginning to take off. When you get both roots and shoots, and the cutting resists when you pull on it, you can put them into another container if you want to. Hey, happy gardening. Enjoy the grapes, one of America's favorite fruits.